Science and religion are typically thought of as very different things, but they both explain how the world is and why it is the way it is. So, what is the relationship between these two and how has it evolved? The relationship between these two can depend upon what perspective it is being looked at from. From one perspective, they can get along together in ways that they are intertwined. So what one doesn't explain, the other one does. So science explains the natural worlds, and religion would explain the paranormal one. But from another perspective, they can be seen as not being able to work together because they're on total opposite spectrums. They just don't agree on anything that is being discussed or being discovered between science, and then religion just doesn't agree with it. So, in our present time today, science and religion tend to get along with each other, but it also can depend upon the person. There are some people who consider themselves very religious, and other people consider them very religious, and they do not agree with a lot of what science stands for and believes in the research that they're doing. But then it also could come from the other side, from a person of science who believes that everything about religion is wrong and that science is the only thing that can truly tell us how the world works, what is true, and everything is just science and not religion. But in general, today, they both can get along and coincide with each other, although there are a few things that they still disagree upon. Although there was a time when science and religion did not get along with each other, a time that religion would prosecute those who disagreed with their teachings and that science says different than what they taught, that there was scientists who would find discoveries that would not coincide with what religion said. And during this time, there was also supposedly a satanic group called the Illuminati, and they were called a brotherhood. And they were people who disagreed with religious teachings and would apparently act on it. But in general, you could still say that religion and science are intertwined, and that science did a very good job of explaining the natural world, where religion does a good job of explaining the paranormal one. And here's a short video of a guy explaining his view on religion versus science. And just a few subtopics of science and religion are creation versus evolution, our solar system, and medicine studies. So, evolution versus creationism. Science teaches evolution and religion teaches creationism. Around the world, there isn't necessarily a separation of church and state like there is in the US. Creationism tends to be in the school's curriculum in other countries, especially ones where religion is very prevalent, because they don't have a separation of church and state. And it is harder to teach evolution in these countries like this, also because it goes against religious views. So the evolution theory basically says that we have all evolved from a common ancestor by gene mutation. And from these gene mutations, it's what gives us the diversity in the world. It's what makes every person slightly different. And it's what makes us different from all these other animals. Because we all have those third and fourth cousins. But if you look at the DNA sequence, you would be able to see how far apart or how distant cousins we are from other animals and plants that are alive on this world today. Creationism comes from the Bible story of Adam and Eve, where God created Adam and placed him in the Garden of Eden, where it was before the original sin, so it was the perfect place to live. There was no sin. It was different from what it is now today. And he placed him there with other plants and animals, where Adam then chose to give names to the different animals and the different plants. And then God decided to give Adam company, and he took one of his ribs to make women, which was Eve. So evolution versus creationism is obviously a present day struggle between science and religion. But at the same time, the relationship between the two is much different than what it was before, because no one is being punished or killed over the disagreement between the two. It's just whether it can be taught in schools or not. So another subtopic of science versus religion is Galileo and our solar system. So religion used to teach and say that the earth is the center of the universe and that the sun orbited the earth. But Galileo was the one who figured out that that's not how it works. He had discovered that we orbit the sun. So Galileo had figured this out when he had decided to point a telescope up to the sky instead of just using it to look out into the distance. And that is when he saw Jupiter. And that made him realize that we are not the center of the universe, because Jupiter doesn't seem to be orbiting around our planet. So he had figured out that we must be orbiting the sun, and so are all the other planets. And that's when he was condemned by the church, even though he was a devoted Catholic, because in that period of time, it was not okay to believe anything other than what the church taught. There's a lot of information out there that says Galileo is a supposed founder of the Illuminati, although they did not truly become the Illuminati until after Galileo's death. And it also says that the Illuminati were hunted by the Catholic Church, and so they fled Rome, and that is when the Illuminati started to mix with some other groups that were not liked by Catholics, and that's when they became a dark group known as a Brotherhood. But this is not necessarily true. The Illuminati are an anti-religious group, but they are not a satanic one, as a lot of information seems to say, and they do not go after Catholics, and they are not trying to get revenge on them. They're just there, and they don't believe in religious teachings. So back in the 15 and 1600s, the relationship between science and religion was more strained, and it was more like they were at war than they are today. And that was seen from the instance with Galileo and the solar system, where he was punished. A third and final subtopic of the relationship between science and religion is medicine studies, and more specifically stem cells, which is something that right now is being discussed between religion and science. Stem cells are something that is being researched to be able to cure chronic diseases right now. Although religion, specifically Roman Catholic religion, does not agree with this for a few different reasons. First, embryonic stem cells are only 3 to 5 days old, and it is considered taking a life away, because those bundles of cells are considered life in the Catholic religion, because those cells are alive and they're going to turn into a fetus, which then turns into a baby. But science sees it from a different perspective, because these cells have the potential to become any type of cell. This could be the answer for many chronic diseases, including juvenile diabetes, for insulin producing cells, because the stem cells could become these cells that would produce insulin. Also for blindness and Alzheimer's disease. But second, stem cells have also been taken from babies who have been aborted. And of course, the church does not agree with this because they do not agree with abortion, and that is a huge thing in politics right now because they don't want abortion to be legal. But for science, they see it as that as a baby has been aborted, we can take the stem cells from them to then save a life when one life has already been taken. And then there's also cloning, which has come from stem cells. And it's another thing that religion has a problem with because it is believed that it would open up doors for evil, but science sees it as something that you can study the person and the difference, just like twins are basically clones of each other, and they study twins to find differences in how we all develop and how it all works like that. The evolving of the relationship between religion and science has a huge effect in countries where religion is prominent, and this includes Italy. Way back in history, it would have been hard to make scientific discoveries and tell anyone about them without being punished by the church. And now it is hard for many medical discoveries to be used if the church disagrees with them, because the church is involved in politics of these countries where religion is very prominent. And the relationship from the past has changed from being more at war to being coexisting but still having disagreements. There are some scientists that would believe that their work is trying to find God to prove the existence of God or higher power. And if I had more time to research, I would like to look into how the relationship can evolve from even more if science can be used to prove religion, because then they're really working together and coexisting with each other because one explains the other.